Hey, in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a bracket, which would be something that would be mounted on a wall, holding up maybe a curtain rod. We are using Autodesk Inventor Professional 2020 for this particular video tutorial. If you're using a newer or an older version, the techniques are going to be very similar. You'll just have a couple different button appearances and maybe a couple different button locations. To get started, I always like to start by clicking on New up at the top. When I click on New, I'm going to have a window come up. Most of the time, you're going to open up some templates, and I want in our class, for this particular assignment, I want you to open up the metric folder. So click on that metric folder. You'll see that I clicked on the little caret drop down to find the metric folder, and we're going to start with the standard mm.ipt, working in millimeters. I can either double click or I can single click on it and then click on Create. It'll take just a moment for my computer to load that template. And here it is. You will find as we're working in Autodesk Inventor that it's very repetitious and you're going to find a pattern will develop. To get started, we're always going to click on Start a 2D Sketch, and we're going to tell the computer which coordinate system or which coordinate plane to use from the coordinate system. We're going to start with the XY coordinate plane. When you do that, your screen will turn into a big plus sign. Now your computer is waiting. Which tool do you want to use? Click on the rectangle tool. And with that rectangle tool, you're going to go to the plus sign or the very center called the origin, and you're going to click to start when you have a green circle. Always try to go to the positive section of the coordinate system as you're working. And now we're going to head to the keyboard. You're going to type in a few numbers and you're going to hit a few buttons on your keyboard. On that keyboard, the first number I want you to type in is 156. And then we need to get to our other box. To do that, you're going to hit the Tab button on your keyboard. Now continuing on the keyboard, you're going to type in 87 on the keyboard, and then we want to save those two measurements by clicking on the Enter. Not a whole lot happened other than two black lines turned into thicker black lines. If we click on the front icon in our orientation cube, you can see that we have our entire rectangle. Now we need to take this two-dimensional shape and turn it into a three-dimensional appearance. We are going to click on Finish Sketch, and we're going to choose our Extrude tool. We'll be using mostly our Extrude tool to make things 3D. It's always defaulting to a standard distance of 10 millimeters when we get started in Inventor. We're going to modify that distance from 10 millimeters to 50 millimeters. So I'm just going to highlight that 10. You can also click in the box and just type in 50 and then hit Enter on my keyboard, and then I need to hit OK in this version of Inventor. Now I want to see my entire rectangular prism, so I'm going to click on the Home button. Now I have my rectangular prism. Now let's continue that repetitive process. We're going to say, hey, I want another sketch. So I'm going to click on Start a 2D Sketch, and it's waiting. It's saying, where do you want to sketch? You now have some surfaces to choose from. So I'm going to click on the front surface. It's going to slide it around. I'm going to use the Pan tool to slide it around. You can also hold down your center button. And I'm going to switch to my rectangular tool. We're going to add two rectangles one at a time. In Inventor, we can only ever extrude one shape at a time. So I'm going to click to start, and notice I am not holding down my mouse, and I am just like moving my cursor around. It's saying, hey, where do you want that to go? So I'm going to head into my keyboard. Because my bottom number is highlighted, I'm going to type in 32 on my keyboard. I'm going to hit Tab to go to that other box, and I'm going to type in 65, and I'm going to hit Enter. So now I have one rectangle. I'd love to make my other rectangle, but Inventor doesn't like when I make two shapes and try to extrude them at the same time. So I'm going to click on Finish Sketch, and I'm going to extrude. Here's my extrude box. Now I have a couple of different ways I can set my extrusion. I can either grab my gold cone and I can pull it through, or I can come up here and I can choose a distance through all, and it's going to say, hey, that must mean you want to cut it, and it will automatically bump to a cut. And then I can click on OK. Let's do the same thing on the other side to turn it into a top hat. Start a 2D sketch, click on the surface. I'm going to pan that down, holding down that scrolling button on my mouse to pan. Grab my rectangle tool. Look for a green circle. That's so important that we look for that green circle. Click to start and slide. So my bottom number is still highlighted, so that means I can start with my smaller number of 32. Tab, 65, and Enter on my keyboard. Make sure you hit that Enter on the keyboard so it saves that final dimension. Now that I have that rectangle, I'm going to finish my sketch and I'm going to extrude it. So I'm going to go to my extrude and I'm going to click on this through all button and it will automatically change all of my other settings accordingly, and I can click on OK. Now we've done a good amount of work, so at this point it would be a really good idea to save your work. In our class, we're always going to be saving to something called the H drive. To find that, you're going to go to File and you're going to choose Save. Because this is the first time I'm saving, a box is going to come up and say, hey, what do you want to call it and where do you want it to go? So first thing I'm going to do is tell it where I want it to go. Now I am going to save to something called my H drive. Your H drive will be somewhere down about here. My computer looks just a little bit different than yours. So as a student in my class, you want to go right about down here and you're going to find your H drive. My H drive looks different, so I am going to save to somewhere completely different so I don't mess up your saving process. I'm going to go right here and I'm going to now name my part. I'm going to call this bracket. I would highly recommend that you also put in your name. And then I'm going to click on Save. When I'm walking around the room, I can always tell if you've saved your project because your name of your project will show up down here and it will show up up here. So up at the top and down at the bottom. Now I can move on and I can add more. So we're going to keep that repetitive process. We're going to click on Start a 2D Sketch and we're going to say, hey, I want to sketch right here. And now I'm going to use my pan feature, holding on that scroll on my mouse, and I'm going to slide it around. Now I want to add a rectangle on the front. So I'm going to click on my rectangle tool. I am going to just make a random size rectangle. I want it to line up with that edge, so it's highlighted purple. Great. I'm going to click to start, and I'm going to click to make a rectangle. Now, using a new tool or a new feature in Inventor, we're going to use our dimension tool to get this rectangle in exactly the right place. To use your dimension tool, we always need to select two parallel lines or surfaces, and we need to tell it where to place the dimension. Do not place dimensions on top of objects. Do not place the number outside of the arrows. We're going to go right up to the top, and we're going to click. Instantly, it's going to say, hey, what do you want that dimension to be? So you're going to go to your keyboard and you're going to type in 21 and hit enter on the keyboard. Let's do it again. I still have my dimension tool because it's selected blue, I know it. I'm going to go from this parallel surface to this parallel surface, parallel with our first surface, and I'm going to say, hey, I want you to be right here. I want my arrows to be lined up. I don't want my number to be where my arrows are. I don't want my dimension to be on my object. I want it right up at top. I'm going to click to drop it. And I'm going to go to my keyboard and I'm going to type in 50 and hit enter on my keyboard. Now I have one more dimension. You're going to want to dimension this. It won't let you, so don't try to do another parallel dimension going that same way. We need the dimension that's perpendicular to this one. So we're going to go from here to here. That's the one we want. And we're going to drop the dimension, not on top of our object, but off to the side. It can go to the right or the left, it doesn't matter. I almost always drop mine to the right, hit the mouse to drop it, go to my keyboard, type in 58, that number is 58, and hit enter. So here are my three dimensions, 21, 50, and 58. This would be a great opportunity to pause the video if you need to write those dimensions down, and then click on Finish Sketch when you're done. Like all of our other dimensions, and all of our other shapes, we are going to extrude this shape. The default is to extrude out. Now this time I can either grab my gold triangle and slide it in, or I can come to the box over here and I can say, hey, I want you to go the other direction. Now I want my number to change. I want my number or my dimension to extrude for a depth of 27. And I'm going to hit I'm going to make sure that it's going back and it's turning red, and I'm going to hit OK on my screen. Now, I always like to save my work. There's a couple of really easy ways you can save your work. You can go to the old school save icon up in the top corner, or you can do it on your keyboard like professionals do, and you can use your keyboard shortcut. Your keyboard shortcut for saving is Control-S, and that saves your work. In Inventor, when we save later on, we will not get a visual to show up on our screen. We're just going to have to trust that it's saved. Continuing on, making some more additions to our bracket. We're going to add in some holes. We're going to drill some holes right here, and we're going to drill a hole here and on that surface. So let's start on this back part. I always am going to start with that 2D sketch, and it's going to say, hey, where do you want to sketch? You're going to choose this surface. Don't choose this one, choose this one. Click on it. Now I'm going to use my pan tool to pan that to the middle, and I'm going to use another new tool. So far we've learned the rectangle tool and the dimension tool, and now we're going to use the point tool. To make a circle, we create a point. And we have to say, hey, I want you to go right about here, and I want another one in line with that right about there. Now I'm going to switch over to my dimension tool, and I'm going to get that to go exactly where I want it. But let's tilt to a bit of an angle. There we go. Now with my dimension tool, I'm going to go from this vertical corner to this green dot, and I'm going to drop that dimension in. Great. Now I'm going to go to my keyboard, I'm going to type in 23, and I'm going to hit enter. Now I want that one to be in line, so I'm going to do it again. Green edge to green point. I'm going to place it inside here. Great. Keyboard 23, enter. So I have them now centered this way. Now I want to set them down from that top edge. Still onto my dimension tool. I'm going to go from the edge to the point. Notice I'm waiting for it to turn green. I'm going to drop that dimension in. And on my keyboard, I'm going to type in 15 and hit enter. Still in my dimension tool, top edge, bottom point, over here. Click to drop it. And I'm going to type in 43 on my keyboard and hit enter. Now I have my points made. I'm going to click on Finish Sketch. Now I can take that point, going to the house, and I can turn that point into a hole. So I'm going to go to my hole tool. So far we've only extruded to make things 3D. Now we can make holes to make things 3D. So I'm going to click on my hole tool, and it's going to say, hey, this is a standard size hole, but we don't want that one. What we want to do is go hole all the way through. We want to change the seat to a countersink, and we're going to change some numbers. First number we're going to change is this top number. We're going to change that top number to 18, and we're going to change this bottom number to 13. It will give us a great little preview of what it's going to look like. When I click on tab, there we go. We have 18 and 13. I'm going to orbit to I'm going to click on the front, see if that's what I want it to look like. Sure is. That looks great. So now I can click on OK. 2 more holes to go. So I always have to start a 2D sketch and say, hey, I want you to sketch right here. I'm going to slide this off to the side, and I'm going to drop a point. I'm going to drop a point here, and I'm going to drop a point here. I'm going to dimension them. Remember, edge to point, and then perpendicular to that, those 2 sets of parallel lines. And I am going to place this from that edge over, 16, and hit enter. Now I'm going to go back edge to point over here, and I'm going to go to my keyboard, type in 23, and hit enter. Same thing on this side. I'm going to go back edge to point. I want it to be the same, so I'm going to go to 23 and hit enter, and then I'm going to go edge to point, bring it to the back, 16, and enter. Awesome. So I can click on Finish Sketch, and I have my 2 points. Now I want to turn those points into holes. So I'm going to go to my hole tool. Last time we had the seat of countersink. This time we're going to choose the seat of counter bore. Notice I have spot face and I have counter bore. A little bit different. Choose counter bore. The sizes should remain the same, 18 and 13, but we want to change our depth to 10. So I'm going to type in 10 here on my keyboard and hit enter. I'm getting a nice preview on this side. I can orbit to the other side. I'm getting a nice preview on that side, and then I can click on OK. I always like to click back on my house, and then after I'm on the house, I like to hit save. Again, I can do save on my screen, or I can do Control S on my keyboard. We are so close to being done. Our last thing is to fillet. We have a couple of different edges we're going to fillet. Our first fillet is going to be a very big fillet of 12 millimeters. So I'm typing in 12 on my keyboard. And now I'm going to move this fillet box to the side. I am going to choose all 4 corners. There's 3 of them. And I'm going to choose this corner. Now I couldn't get all of them in this one, but I want them all to be the same. So I'm going to orbit, and I'm going to choose this edge and this edge. Perfect. Now I click on apply. I have a few more fillets to go, but this time I don't want them to be 12 because that would look silly. I want them to be 3. So I'm going to choose 3. And I'm going to start clicking on almost all the other surfaces. Now it's just not letting me do that. Let's try it again. I'm going to click on cancel and start from the beginning. It wasn't liking the way I was selecting it. So I have 3. Now let's see if it'll let me go. I didn't like that I got rid of that millimeter. Let's click. There we go. I had to add in my dimension label. So just be sure that you're adding in that dimension. I'm going to select the 2 U's. I'm going to select the whole top way around. Missed that one. Now I'm going to go this vertical, this vertical, this vertical. I want this corner and this U. I don't want the bottom. I'm going to orbit to the other side. I want this one, this vertical, that one, and this U. Don't counterbore those holes, or sorry, don't fillet the holes. Don't fillet the bottom, just those ones. I'm going to click on apply. I'm going to click on cancel because I'm done. Now I can do Control S, and I am ready for the next step, which will be in a different video.